Hello, I am Glenn Martin, and I am one of the coaches of the UCF programming team. In this video, I'll be going through some of the system details of the 2021 UCF Local Programming Contest. It is important to note that this is actually a second video in the series about the contest, and Dr. Ali Arouji has recorded part 1 about general concepts of the contest, and you are encouraged to also go view that video as well. In this video, we'll be getting into the system details themselves. So first, let me go through some contest basics. First, the contest itself this year will be in multiple rounds. So the first round is called the practice round or orientation round, and it will be held solely online. So you'll compete from home. Again, it's just for practice. It will be held on Saturday, August 28th, starting at 2 p.m. The results of this round do not count at all. It's just simply a way for you to see the system and try it out. Officially, the coaches will be online from 2 to 5:30 p.m. that day, but we will leave the round open for extended participation through Wednesday, so you can continue to practice and try submitting the different problems. Okay. The following Saturday, on September 4th, we will have the qualifying round. Again, this will be online, but this is the first round that will count. And so we will run it for 3.5 hours that day from 2 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will take roughly the top 70 people will be invited to the next round, plus any returning varsity people. So it could be, a total is a little more than 70. But basically, we will take top 70 new people or returning junior varsity people, and then we'll add in the returning varsity. And those people will be invited to the final round. Now, the final round is invitation only, so only these people making it out of the qualifying round can participate in the final round. And it will be held in person on the UCF main campus on Saturday, September 11th. And it will start at 10 a.m. and go to 7 p.m. The contest itself that day will be 5 hours long, and you'll compete individually in person, and we will use the results to help form the team for the 2021-2022 academic year. So how do you participate in these rounds? Well, first you have to register. That's most important. But you only have to register one time. You do not need to register for each round. So you just need to go to this URL, ucf.pt/register, and fill out the form that's there. It will be online starting August 1st. So either on or after August 1st, you can go to that URL and register for the contest. Shortly before your first round of participation, you will receive an email with login information, including the URL, the username, and the password for you. For most people, this will be before the practice round, but if for some reason you registered between the practice round and the qualifying round, you will receive that information leading up to the qualifying round. Again, the final round is invitation only, so there won't be any additional registration open after the qualifying round. So the contest itself, you're given a problem set. It has roughly between 6 and 15 problems in it. You can work on them in any order you want. You don't have to go front to back. You don't need to even finish a problem. You can drop a problem if you want. You basically are given a set amount of time, and you can use one PC. So in the practice and qualifying rounds, you basically have 3.5 hours. And then in the final round, if you are invited to the final round, it will be a 5-hour contest. But again, it's one PC, and the person solving the most problems wins. And then there are ties broken by a system of what's called penalty points that are based on time and multiple judge runs that we'll go through some examples for here soon. So what can you do during these rounds? Well, of course, you can create and edit files on your system, particularly your potential solution, right? Once you've coded up your solution, you're going to want to test your program and make sure it's going to run on different inputs, and we'll go more into that in a little bit. But you can test your program on your machine as much as you want. You can ask what's called clarification requests to the judges. So if you feel there's something ambiguous in a problem, or the problem contradicts itself somewhere, you can point that out to the judges and ask for a clarification. And then the judges will either respond to you and clarify that, or if it's serious enough, they will respond and send it to all contestants. Or if they feel it is clear and maybe you're just not seeing something, or maybe you're trying to fish for extra information or something, they will they have the option to send back the response, just no response. Okay? So those are sort of the three things you can get from a clarification request. The other thing you can do is submit a potential solution to the judges for a judge run. And do this, you submit one file only, and you do not give prompts for input or anything like that. We'll show that here in a couple minutes. But you just read input from standard input or the keyboard, not from a file. And then you send your output to standard output or the screen, again, not to a file. So it's just, just like you're interacting with the user. And then you're allowed to use any reference material. Now, for the practice and qualifying round, you can use electronic material and copy and paste from that material. For the in-person final round, you cannot. You have to bring hard copy with you. Okay? But again, you can use material, but not people. All right? And we'll go more into that in a second. So what can you not do? Well, you cannot use unofficial programming languages. So the contest only supports C, C++, Java, or Python 3. And you'll be sending your source code to the judges, so you have to send one of those languages. If you send something else, the judges won't have any ability to compile it or anything. So you have to use one of the official languages. You also cannot ask or receive direct help from others. So you can communicate with the contest officials either online, and we'll go into that, how you'll do that, or in person, you can raise your hand. But this is an individual contest through all the rounds, okay? So whether it's online or in person, you are supposed to do your individual work. You can, during the practice and qualifying rounds, you may use published material on the internet, but you cannot ask individuals for help at your home. You cannot message somebody online for help. You can only use published material that is not basically available for a fee. Just it has to be publicly available to all people. All right. So we may interview some of the potential team members afterwards, just to make sure we have security with everything going on there. All right. So if you need to reach out to the contest officials, particularly for technical problems, you can email us at this email, ucfprogteam@gmail.com, or you can chat with us in this little chat room, tlk.io/ucfprogteam. It seems to work a lot better in Chrome, so we recommend that. We also have a Zoom meeting that we can send you the link if we need to, if we want to view your screen for some reason. But again, this is for technical problems. You're having some trouble connecting to the submission site or something like that. If you have a question about a problem, you think it's not clear, you need to use the clarification request system within the submission site and send it to the judges. And we'll show that here in a few minutes. So scoring, again, most problems solved wins. So if you solve 5 problems and I solve 4 problems, well, you win. Okay. Ties are broken by penalty points. So if you solve 5 problems and I solve 5 problems, then we'll use penalty points to break that tie, and we'll go into that in a second. It's important to note that you do not accumulate penalty points for problems you never solve. So if you work on the 3rd problem in the set and submit it 14 times and never get it correct, you do not collect any penalty points for it. So how are these penalty points calculated? Well, you get 1 penalty point for every minute since the beginning of the contest until that problem is solved. So if you solve a problem 30 minutes into the contest, you get 30 penalty points for those 30 minutes from the beginning of the contest. If you solve a second problem at the 1-hour mark, well, that problem collects 60 penalty points for the time because, again, it's measured from the start of the contest, not from the previous correct submission. Okay, and then additionally, you get 20 penalty points for each judge run except the last correct one. So if you submit something 4 times and it comes back wrong 4 times, and then on the 5th time you finally get it correct, then you collect 80 additional penalty points. So that's 20 penalty points for each of the 4 wrong submissions. Okay, and then these get summed up and then are used to break the tie. Okay. So let's go into the contest systems a little bit. So both, when you're doing the practice and qualifying rounds online, you'll want to set up some environments on your home machine. And then in the final round, if you're invited to the final round in person, all these environments will be made available to you in the lab. So for Java, we always recommend the simplest one to use is JGrasp. It's just much easy to just create a file and start compiling and running. The other ones that we usually make available that you could use are Eclipse, NetBeans, and IntelliJ IDEA, but they all require projects to be set up and things like that. So it's a little more complicated. You kind of need to know how to use them. So we highly recommend JGrasp if you're not really familiar with one of these others. Similarly, for C++, we recommend code blocks, and that's what we'll make available in the final in-person round. And for Python, pretty much the simplest is to use the Python idle environment that comes with Python, but we do make PyCharm also available, but again, that requires a project to be set up. So it's a little more complicated. Judging this year is also a little complicated based off which round we're talking about. So because they're being online versus in person. So the practice and qualifying rounds are being held online. So the judges will use OpenJDK 11.0.11 to judge Java. For C and C++, the judges will use GCC G++ 11.1.1. And it's important to note that they will be set up for the C11 and C++ library standards. For Python, the judges are actually going to use a system called PyPy. And PyPy is basically just a compiled Python. So it takes your Python code and it does a just-in-time compilation of it. And so it will run faster. And that will actually help you out a little bit to solve some of these problems. It's a little more quickly because Python tends to run a little more slowly. But the version of PyPy that we'll be using for the practice and qualifying rounds is based off Python 3.6.9. And then the final round, it will be similar, just different versions. So for Java, the judges will use OpenJDK 16.0.1. For C, C++, we'll use GCC G++ 8.1.0, but again, using the C11 and C++ 17 library standards. And then in Python, again, the judges will use PyPy, but a slightly newer version, 7.3.5, that is based on Python 3.7.10. For the final in-person round, we have made PyPy available to you just for you to test it if you would like to see it run as the judges would. So you can bring up a command prompt in the lab in the final round and go to your dry view where your sources are stored and type /PyPy and then your file name. So for example here, test.py. And it will use PyPy to run your Python program so you can see how much faster it is. Okay. The environments, idle and PyCharm, will use regular normal Python. So if you're developing in there, they're going to use the slower Python. And that's why we made this ability to test PyPy to you. In the practice and qualifying rounds, you may want to download PyPy separately as well, and you can Google for that and find the link. All right, so a few minor language notes at the end. For C and C++, make sure your main function ends with return 0. We want that you want to do that to make sure you don't confuse the judging system. So you want to return 0 out from main, so it basically indicates you have not crashed. For Java, please do not use packages. We do not allow the use of packages, so just do not put a package line in your source anywhere, or if the IDE puts one, make sure to take it out. This will generate runtime error, and we run into issues every year with this, even though we really emphasize to not put a package statement. Every year we have people that do. So please just don't put package in your Java source, all right? And then for Python, just want to point out that we're using Python 3 only, and if you happen to submit code that's Python 2, you'll likely get a runtime error. Okay. All right, let's go into judging a little bit. So again, the problem set will have between 6 and 15 problems posed. You can work on them in any order. You do not have to get one correct to move to the next one. So if you are working on one and getting it wrong a lot, you can give up on it and go switch problems if you want. You're not forced to get it correct before continuing. But for each problem, there'll be a specification that explains the problem itself, include how the input will be specified, and how your output should appear. And in addition, there'll be a little example of the input and the output provided, so you can see an example of it to help clarify anything. And then, but your program must follow the specification for the output of the program precisely. So if it says place a blank line after the output, you must place a blank line after the output. Okay. So this on the right here, this is what a problem typically looks like. So this is a problem from last year's local programming contest. So you see at the top it has a problem title, and then it has a problem file name, and you also see a time limit. So for each problem it has this file name, and you have to name your source file based on that. So if you're doing C, you do microwave.c. If you're doing C++, do microwave.cpp. If you're doing Java, microwave.java. If you're doing Python, microwave.py. Okay, and then all your submission must be contained in a single file, because you'll upload just a single file. And then remember, in Java, we do require that all class names be all lowercase. So make sure to keep it just like the file name given in the problem. So it's lowercase microwave in this case. So make sure you always do that. And again, just as I mentioned earlier, you want to read input from standard in, or like the keyboard, and then output to the screen. So or standard out. So not to a file, don't open a window or make it GUI or everything, just print out text. So for example, in this problem, you see the first sample input is 05:00. So your program would just read that like the user is typing it. There's no prompt for the user or anything like that. And then similarly, your output in this case would be 04:55:00. And in this case, the output specification says just output this time, like in this. There's no extra text around it or anything like that. So make sure you will follow the output specification precisely. Okay. All right, so when you've written your program, of course you can and should test your program as much as you want at your station. The sample input and sample output is provided electronically in the submission site, but you should think of all possible test cases that the problem specification allows. So the problem might allow more input or more different kinds of input than just the samples cover, and the judges will test those. So you do not need to handle data that doesn't follow the specification, but the judges will make additional test cases beyond the samples that do follow that problem specification. So you need to think through, especially there might be a case that could crash your program in certain cases. And if you don't test that and handle it, you may end up getting an incorrect response back. So, make sure to think through what does the problem allow and test your program. When the judges judge your program, they will be using a larger set of test data. They will not use just the samples, but it will be guaranteed to be valid by the specification. The judges typically use file redirection for judging, so you see it here running for C, C++, Java, and Python. We're redirecting an input file in and then taking your output so we can check it. And then additionally at the bottom here, you can see how the judges can run PyPy, so it's similar to what we're providing to you in the final round. So we can run your Python program with the just-in-time PyPy compiler. Okay. So this is what the submission site looks like itself. So again, shortly before your first round of participation, you'll get an email with the URL we're using this year and the username and password, and you'll come to it and you'll enter your username and password and log in. And then this is what it will look like after you've logged in. So you have a number of menu options, as well as a clock is sort of appearing in the upper right here. Right now it says competition has not started, but that will have a countdown clock for the round itself. But looking at the menu, you can get a status page, which basically has all your judge responses. So if you submit it to the judges, it will have all the responses that the judges sent back to you. If you submitted a clarification request about a problem, the judge response for that clarification request will also be shown on the status page. View problems lets you view the problems in PDF format, so you can read them there. And that will be available to you. Similarly, sample data has the example cases from each problem there available for you to download if you so wish. And you can use that for all your testing. And And then when you're ready to submit to the judges, you basically click on Submit Solution. You pick the problem you want to submit on, and then you select your file, and then you just click Submit, and that sends off to the judges. The judges will judge it, come up with some judge response that we'll go over here in a minute, and then you'll see that on your status page. Okay. Similarly, you can click on Ask Clarification. You'll pick a problem. You'll type up in an editor what your ambiguity you feel is that's not clear, and you'll send that to the judges. The judges will send some kind of response back, either to you, to everybody, or might just say no response. And you'll see that on your status page. Okay. And then the next option here is the score, and we can view the score, and we'll show that in the next slide here in a second. So I'll come back to that. And then we also provide language references and also a link towards the technical support, which I went over earlier and we'll summarize at the end on how you can reach out for technical support. All right, so this is what the scoreboard looks like when you click on score. So this is a score from our high school programming tournament that we held last year in 2020. So here you see if somebody gets a submission correct, it is in green with a little green check mark in the background. If it's incorrect, they have not yet solved the problem, it's in red with a little red X. You see the number on top is the number of submissions that they either took or have taken so far. And then the time that appears below is the time that it was solved or judged correct. Okay. Now, this score is frozen in the final hour. So in the final hour, you will not see updates on the scoreboard here. So you won't see whether other people have solved problems. But if you solve the problem in the final hour, you will get that response on your status page. So you will know that you solved the problem, but you won't know if other people solved a problem in the final hour. And that's just for excitement at the end. All right. So the one other note here is you'll see some boxes are kind of a darker green, and that does not give you any kind of bonus or anything, but it's just a notation to basically show who solved each problem first. Okay. Again, no extra points or anything like that. It's just to see it. All right, so when you're ready to submit your problem to the judges, it has to pass certain criteria. So of course it has to compile, it has to then run successfully without crashing, and it has to run completely within a given time limit. Also, it has to generate correct answers, of course, and in the proper format. And then finally, you have to, of course, produce answers for all the test cases, so not just some. All right, and if you fail any of these criteria, you basically get, regardless of whether you fail or not, you're basically given one of these 6 judge responses. So when you submit your solution to the judges, they will run it on their judge data, and then you will receive one of these messages back. Okay, so obviously the first one is the one you want. So if they judge that it's correct, you'll get the correct response back. It will show green on the scoreboard. You have solved that problem and ready to move on. Okay. If it's not correct, you'll get one of 5 responses. You'll either get compile time error, meaning they compiled your program and it failed to compile on the judge station. Usually this is from somebody who doesn't click save one final time or something like that. You don't see it too often, but it can happen. So that's the compile time error. If your program's compiled, now we're running it, but it crashes for some reason or locks up the machine for some reason, then you will get runtime error. So it is probably getting tricked by some special case in the problem, like maybe causing you to divide by 0 or something like that. So you might be throwing an exception, which is a runtime error. Okay. If it is compiling and running without crashing, then it needs to run fast enough. And for a lot of these problems, it's not too hard. So every problem has a time limit associated with it. So we saw a microwave earlier had a 5-second time limit. So basically it means that if you submit on this microwave problem, it has to run within 5 seconds. And if it doesn't, the judges will kill your program and respond with time limit exceeded. So you can get this mostly if your program gets an infinite loop or something, or if you have a very inefficient algorithm that just can't handle the amount of data that the specification allows. So if your program just takes a long time to run, you'll get time limit exceeded. All right, now if your program is running and not crashing and running fast enough, we'll look at the answers. And you might get wrong answer, which basically means, we're looking at your answers, but they're not correct. So if the answer is 5 and you said 14, that's a wrong answer, right? It's not matching the correct answer. If we look at your answers, but it looks like they're all correct and good, but maybe there's something wrong with the formatting, you can receive incorrect output format. So the correct answers are there, but they're not formatted correctly. So it could be that you were supposed to have a blank line and didn't, or maybe you didn't capitalize something properly, or maybe you're missing some punctuation mark or something. And then you can get incorrect output format. Okay. And these are basically all the responses you can get. And this is all you will get from the judges. So if you get a wrong answer or a runtime error or something, they're not going to tell you what the case was or where did it crash or anything like that. You have to think about the problem and analyze, what am I missing? What's my program maybe not handling that it should be? The judges will not tell you what the case is. You will literally receive just one of these responses. All right, so again, reminder, during the rounds, if you have any technical problems, you can reach out to us by emailing us at ucfprogteam@gmail.com, or you can chat with us at this website, tlk.io/ucfprogteam. It's a public chat site, so you see each other's chat. Works best with Chrome. We've noticed some issues with Firefox lately. But again, if you have clarification requests about the problems themselves, please use the submission site and send that to the judges. This email and chat site should only be used for technical problems, like logging in or something. Okay? Other than that, I just want to say good luck and have fun at the contest.